Parental advisory: the truth is explicit. We've got the real stories behind the craziest heavy metal rumors ever whispered. A famous band's secret contract demand that saved lives, and a Norwegian group's obsession with dead animals are just the beginning. 1. The Prince of Darkness and his unforgettable snack. Everyone who knows anything about heavy metal has heard of Ozzy Osbourne. He's called the Prince of Darkness for a reason. His band, Black Sabbath, pretty much invented the sound of heavy metal, and his solo career was just as huge and legendary. Ozzy has always been known for his wild stage presence and for doing things that nobody else would dare to do. For years, a crazy story followed him around. People whispered that during a concert, Ozzy Osbourne bit the head off a live bat right on stage. It sounds like something made up, a story to scare parents. It's so gross and unbelievable that it just has to be fake, right? Well, here's the unbelievable truth. It really happened. The year was 1982, and Ozzy was in the middle of a show in Des Moines, Iowa. During his concerts, it was common for fans to throw things on stage. They would throw fake spiders, rubber snakes, and all sorts of spooky stuff. On this particular night, a young fan threw something small and black onto the stage. Ozzy, thinking it was a rubber toy bat, decided to do something shocking for the crowd. He picked it up and bit into it. He immediately realized something was terribly wrong. The bat was real, and even worse, it bit him back. The show went on, but as soon as he got off stage, Ozzy had to be rushed to the hospital. He had to go through a painful series of rabies shots just in case the little creature was sick. The story became one of the most famous and disgusting moments in all of music history, proving that sometimes the wildest rumors are completely true. A musician biting an animal is shocking, for sure. But believe it or not, that's not even the wildest story about a rock star's body. The next story is about a guy whose heart literally stopped beating, and he lived to write a song about it. 2. Nikki Sixx and his trip to the other side. The band Motley Crue was the definition of 1980s rock and roll excess. They were famous for their loud music, crazy hair, and even crazier lifestyles. The band was made up of 4 members who were all known for pushing the limits, but the bass player, Nikki Sixx, was maybe the most famous for his wild habits. The band had a reputation for throwing insane parties that would last for days. The stories from these parties were the stuff of legend, full of broken furniture and complete chaos. One rumor that floated around for a long time was that Nicky's partying was so intense that it actually caused his heart to stop, and that he was technically gone for a couple of minutes before doctors brought him back. Truth be told, this insane story is 100% true. In December of 1987, Nikki Sixx was partying hard with some other famous rockers. He took too many substances, and his body just shut down. His heart stopped beating completely. For 2 full minutes, he was gone. Paramedics arrived and had to act fast. They gave him a shot of adrenaline directly into his chest, a move you usually only see in movies. Miraculously, it worked. His heart started beating again. The news spread like wildfire. Some papers even reported that he had passed away. But he survived, and the experience changed him forever. Instead of hiding from it, the band leaned into the story. They even wrote one of their biggest hit songs about it, called Kickstart My Heart. It became a legendary tale of a rock star who went too far, stared into the great beyond, and came back to tell the tale. Back from the Brink is a pretty intense story. Some bands didn't need a near catastrophe to create chaos. The next band on our list created their own bizarre situations with pranks that went way, way too far. 3. Black Sabbath and the Little Person Problem. Black Sabbath, even after Ozzy left, continued to be a huge force in heavy metal. In the early 80s, they had a new singer named Ian Gillan, and the band had a new, powerful sound. They were planning a massive tour for their album Born Again. The album cover had a weird-looking devil baby on it, and the band wanted their stage show to be just as epic and memorable. They decided they wanted to recreate Stonehenge, the famous ancient stone circle from England, as their stage set. The rumor that followed this tour was that the band messed up their measurements so badly that the stage set was comically huge and unusable, and to make it even weirder, they hired a little person to dress as the devil baby from the album cover, who then got stuck on top of the giant stone. This story is not only true, but it's even funnier and stranger than the rumors suggest. The band's manager asked them for the measurements for the Stonehenge set. Geezer Butler, the bass player, jokingly said it should be life-size. The problem was, he didn't realize that the real Stonehenge stones are absolutely massive, some as tall as 30 feet. The management company went ahead and built a real life-size Stonehenge set. It was so enormous that it didn't fit in most of the arenas they were booked to play in. For the few places they could set it up, it was a disaster. Then came the second part of the story. They did indeed hire a little person to play the devil baby. During one show, he was supposed to lie on top of one of the giant stone props, but the mechanism to lower him down broke. He was stuck up there for the entire show, high above the band, until a roadie could climb up and get him down after the concert ended. The whole tour became a legendary rock and roll failure. A tour with a giant broken stage set is one thing, but our next tale of rock and roll strangeness involves a band, a hotel room, and a very, very unlucky fish. 4. Led Zeppelin and the unfortunate red snapper. Led Zeppelin is one of the biggest and most important bands in the history of rock music. They were like gods in the 1970s, selling out stadiums and creating music that is still loved today. But along with their fame came a reputation for being the wildest band on the road. The stories of their behavior in hotels are legendary and often shocking. They were known for destroying rooms and throwing massive, out-of-control parties. One of the most infamous and disgusting rumors about them involved a groupie, a hotel room in Seattle, and the creative use of a fish. For years, people have whispered about the shark incident, a story so gross and weird that many people refuse to believe it could be true. While the exact details have been debated for years, the core of the story is, unfortunately, real. The incident took place at the Edgewater Inn in Seattle, a hotel where guests could actually fish right from their room windows. The band had caught some fish, including a red snapper. Later that day, during a party with a group of young female fans, things got completely out of hand. Members of the band and their crew used a piece of the fish to do some truly disgusting and disrespectful things with one of the girls. The story is a dark and ugly mark on the band's history. It's a perfect example of how absolute fame and power can lead people to do terrible things. It shows a side of the rock and roll lifestyle that is not glamorous at all, but instead just plain ugly. Using an animal in a gross prank is truly awful. Our next story also involves an animal and a rock star on stage, but this one happened by complete accident, creating a legend that the singer never asked for. 5. Alice Cooper and the chicken that couldn't fly. Before Marilyn Manson, before Slipknot, there was Alice Cooper. He was the original shock rocker. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, Alice Cooper and his band put on shows that were more like scary plays than concerts. They used fake blood, guillotines, and electric chairs on stage. Alice wanted to shock the audience and give them something they would never forget. One of the earliest and most famous rumors about him was that he bit the head off a live chicken and drank its blood on stage. This story made him a villain to parents and a hero to rebellious teenagers everywhere. It cemented his reputation as a complete monster. But here is where the story gets twisted. A chicken was involved, but the story that spread was totally wrong. It happened at a big festival in Toronto in 1969. Someone in the audience threw a live chicken onto the stage. Alice, who had grown up in the city, had no idea about farm animals. He saw the chicken and saw that it had wings. In his mind, he thought, it's a bird. It has wings. It should be able to fly. So he picked up the chicken and gently tossed it into the air, expecting it to soar out over the crowd. He didn't realize that chickens can't really fly. The bird dropped straight down into the audience. What happened next was truly gruesome. The crowd, who were in a frenzy, tore the poor animal to pieces. The next day, the newspapers all ran headlines saying, Alice Cooper rips chicken apart on stage. The rumor was born, and it made him more famous than ever. He always said he would never hurt an animal, but the legend was just too good for people to let go. The story of the chicken is a wild misunderstanding, but the next story is no misunderstanding at all. It involves a legendary guitarist and a very, very strange way of honoring his father. 6. Keith Richards and his father's final wish. The Rolling Stones are another band that has been around forever. They are the definition of rock and roll survival. And at the heart of the band is the guitarist Keith Richards. Keith is maybe more famous for his unbelievable lifestyle than he is for his music. The man has done things that would have taken down a normal person decades ago. He's a true rock and roll outlaw, and the stories about him are absolutely legendary. For years, a rumor circulated that was so bizarre and dark, it had to be a joke. The rumor was that after his father, Bert, passed away, Keith Richards had his body cremated, and then, instead of scattering the ashes, he actually snorted some of them. Get ready to be shocked, because this one is absolutely true, and it came from Keith himself. In an interview years later, he confirmed the whole story. His father had been cremated, and Keith was holding on to the ashes in a black box. One day, he decided it was time to finally scatter them. He opened the box, and just as he did, a little bit of the ash blew out onto the table. Keith looked at the ashes on the table and thought about what to do. He didn't want to just wipe them away. That felt disrespectful. So he decided to do the most Keith Richards thing imaginable. He took a little bit of the ash and snorted it. As he explained it, he knew his father wouldn't have cared. In fact, he probably would have found it funny. It was a strange, and for most people, a very gross way to say goodbye. But for Keith Richards, it was a perfectly normal way to keep his dad with him forever. Inhaling a family member is about as personal as it gets. But some bands preferred to share their disgusting moments with the entire audience, as our next story proves. 7. WASP and the Flying Raw Meat. In the 1980s, heavy metal was all about being bigger, louder, and more shocking than the next band. A band from Los Angeles called WASP took this idea to a whole new level. Their name itself was meant to be controversial, and their live shows were designed to make people uncomfortable. The lead singer, a man named Blackie Lawless, would come out on stage wearing wild outfits with a codpiece that shot sparks. They had a stage show that included a torture rack and other wild props. One of the biggest rumors about their early shows was that Blackie Lawless would throw buckets of raw meat out into the audience, covering them in beef and blood. This rumor is totally true and was a key part of their show for a while. Blackie wanted the concerts to be an assault on the senses. He wanted the fans to feel like they were in the middle of a crazy, primal ritual. So he would bring about 40 pounds of raw butcher meat, like liver and hamburger, on stage with him in a big bucket. During the show, at the height of the chaos, he would grab handfuls of this raw, cold meat and just hurl it into the crowd. Fans in the front row would get slapped in the face with it. They would go home covered in bits of raw animal parts. It was meant to be a statement about people being primal animals. It was also incredibly gross and unsanitary. The band eventually had to stop doing it because venues started complaining about the mess and the smell. But the legend of the flying meat helped make WASP one of the most talked about bands of the era. Throwing meat is one way to be shocking, but our next band took shocking to a level that was so extreme, it got them in serious trouble with the law in a foreign country. 8. Gorgo Roth and the Krakow Controversy. Most heavy metal bands use dark and spooky imagery. They sing about monsters, history, and scary things. But there is a type of heavy metal called black metal that takes this to the absolute extreme. Black metal bands from Norway in the early 1990s were known for being truly intense and serious about their dark image. A band named Gorgo Roth is one of the most famous and controversial bands from that scene. A rumor from the mid-2000s claimed that they put on a concert in Poland that was so offensive and visually disturbing that it was investigated by the police as a criminal act. The rumor mentioned impaled animal heads and other things that are hard to even imagine. This isn't just a rumor. It was a filmed event that became a legendary moment in black metal history. In 2004, the band was filming a concert in Krakow, Poland, for a future DVD release. They decided to make the stage show the most extreme thing anyone had ever seen. They filled the stage with about 80 impaled sheep heads. They also had 4 real, live people hanging on crosses, pretending to be victims. The stage was covered in 200 gallons of sheep's blood. The whole thing was meant to be a powerful, anti-religious statement. However, they were in Poland, a country that is very religious and has strict laws about offending religious feeling. When the Polish authorities saw the footage, they were horrified. They launched a full investigation. The band members were questioned, and the promoter of the concert was even charged with a crime. The footage was confiscated for years, but it was eventually released, proving that the rumors of this unbelievably graphic and disgusting concert were true. A stage show with real animal parts is stomach-turning. But for some black metal bands, the disgusting things weren't just for the show. For our next musician, it was a part of his everyday life. 9. Mayhem and the Singer Who Loved Decay. The story of the Norwegian black metal scene is one of the darkest in all of music. And at the center of that story is the band Mayhem. They wanted to be the most evil and authentic band in the world. They were not pretending. A huge part of their legend was their singer, a mysterious man from Sweden who called himself Dead. The rumors about Dead are some of the most unsettling in rock history. It was said that he was obsessed with all things related to passing away. The whispers said he would carry a dead bird in a bag and smell it before shows, that he would bury his clothes in a cemetery to get the smell of the grave on them, and that he would harm himself on stage. Believe it or not, all of these disturbing rumors about Dead are true. He was a deeply troubled person who was completely committed to creating a feeling of darkness and misery around the band. His bandmates confirmed these stories years later. Before a concert, he would pull out a plastic bag that contained a dead crow he had found. He would inhale deeply from the bag, saying he wanted to smell the scent of the grave to get in the right mood. He would also bury his stage clothes in the dirt for weeks before a show so that they would be covered in soil and start to rot. He wanted to look like he had just climbed out of a coffin. He was also one of the first musicians to wear corpse paint, the black and white makeup style that became famous in the black metal scene. His commitment to this dark image was absolute, but it came from a very dark place in his mind. The story of Mayhem eventually took an even darker turn, leading to a terrible falling out between members that had a tragic and permanent end. A fascination with dead things is deeply weird, but some band rumors are weird for a totally different reason. The next story is about a band whose strangest rumor was actually a brilliant act of self-preservation. 10. Van Halen's secret M&M test. Van Halen was one of the biggest rock bands in the world in the 1980s. They were known for Eddie Van Halen's incredible guitar playing and David Lee Roth's wild frontman antics. They were also known for being a massive party band that demanded the best of everything on tour. One of the most famous and silliest rumors in rock history is about their concert contract. The story goes that Van Halen had a long list of demands for their dressing room, and buried deep inside the list was a very specific clause. There had to be a bowl of M&M candies, but with all of the brown ones removed. If even one brown M&M was found, the band could cancel the whole show and still get paid. It sounds like the ultimate spoiled rock star demand. This rumor is completely true, but the reason for it is absolutely genius. Van Halen's stage show was huge and complicated. It involved tons of heavy equipment, complex lighting rigs, and a lot of electricity. If things weren't set up exactly right, it could be incredibly dangerous for the band and the crew. The contract for their shows was a huge technical document that was dozens of pages long. They knew that many local promoters wouldn't read it carefully, so they created the brown M and M clause as a secret test. When the band arrived at a venue, the first thing they would do is check the M and M bowl. If they saw a brown M and M, They knew instantly that the promoter had not read the contract carefully. This meant there could be other, much more serious mistakes in the stage setup, like problems with the weight-bearing structures or the electrical grounding. The brown M and M were a simple warning sign that allowed them to double-check everything for safety. It wasn't about being divas. It was about protecting their lives. Using candy to check for safety is brilliant. But our next frontman didn't need a secret test to cause trouble. He would create chaos all by himself right in the middle of a show. 11. Axl Rose and the Riot in St. Louis. Guns N' Roses was considered the most dangerous band in the world in the late 80s and early 90s. They were unpredictable, wild, and incredibly talented. At the center of the storm was their lead singer, Axl Rose. Axl was known for his amazing voice and his very short temper. He was famous for starting concerts late, sometimes by hours, and for yelling at the audience or security guards from the stage. One of the most notorious rumors about the band was that Axl Rose once got so angry about a camera in the audience that he jumped off the stage to confront the fan, which then caused the entire audience to riot and destroy the venue. This event is not a rumor. It's a famous piece of rock and roll mayhem. In July 1991, Guns N' Roses was playing a show near St. Louis. The tour was massive and tensions were high. During the show, Axl saw a fan in the front rows with a camera taking pictures. The band's security was supposed to not allow any cameras. Axl pointed out the fan to the local security guards, but they didn't do anything. Axl got angrier and angrier. Finally, he decided to take matters into his own hands. He yelled into the microphone, "Well, thanks to the lame security, I'm going home." Then he dove headfirst into the crowd, tackled the guy with the camera, and was pulled back on stage by his crew. He then grabbed his microphone, slammed it on the stage, and walked off. The rest of the band followed. The angry crowd, who had waited for hours for the show, went completely wild. They started rioting, tearing up the seats, breaking equipment, and setting fire. The incident became a symbol of the band's chaotic nature and Axl's unpredictable temper. Starting a riot is one way to get your band in trouble, but the next band on our list found ways to torment each other with pranks that were truly painful and dangerous. 12. Black Sabbath's fiery prank on their drummer. The members of Black Sabbath were not just bandmates. They were friends who grew up together, and like many groups of friends, they loved to play pranks on each other. However, their pranks were not the normal, harmless kind. The band, especially guitarist Tony Iommi, had a reputation for being relentless pranksters. The main target of their jokes was often the drummer, Bill Ward. A truly insane rumor claims that the band's pranks on Bill got so out of hand that they once covered him in flammable liquid and actually set him on fire. It sounds too cruel and dangerous to be true, even for a wild rock band. Horrifyingly, this story is true. It happened during the recording of their album, Heaven and Hell. The band had finished for the day, and Bill Ward asked Tony if he could do something to liven things up. It was a huge mistake. Tony and the rest of the guys decided to pull their most extreme prank ever. They took a can of the liquid used for cleaning studio equipment, which was extremely flammable, and dumped the entire thing all over Bill Ward. Bill was completely soaked in it. Then Tony flicked a lighter. Bill instantly burst into a ball of flames. He suffered third-degree burns on his legs and was in incredible pain. The other band members had to put him out and rush him to get medical care. The prank went way too far and physically harmed their friend and bandmate. It's a shocking example of how bored musicians with too much time and money can do things that are just unbelievably stupid and dangerous. Setting your friend on fire is a terrible thing to do. But our next rock star found a way to get in trouble with an entire city by disrespecting one of its most sacred places. 13th. Ozzy Osbourne's unforgivable act at the Alamo. Ozzy Osbourne makes our list for a second time, and for good reason. His life in the 1980s was a blur of crazy decisions and shocking behavior. After the bad incident, you would think he couldn't do anything more to shock people. but you would be wrong. This next rumor is about something he did off stage that got him in major trouble with the law and banned from an entire city for a decade. The story goes that Ozzy, in the middle of the day, put on his wife's dress, stumbled out onto the streets of San Antonio, Texas, and relieved himself on a famous historical monument. This tale of public disrespect is absolutely true. In 1982, the same year as the bat incident, Ozzy was in San Antonio for a concert. He had been partying all day. For reasons that only made sense to him at the time, he decided to put on one of his wife Sharon's dresses and go for a walk. While wandering around, he felt the call of nature. He looked for a quiet place, but ended up next to a stone monument. What he didn't know was that he was standing next to the cenotaph, a memorial statue right next to the Alamo. The Alamo is one of the most sacred and important historical sites in all of Texas. It's a symbol of Texan independence. As he was relieving himself on this beloved monument, a police officer saw him and arrested him immediately. He was charged with public intoxication and defiling a monument. The city of San Antonio was so offended that they banned him from performing there. The ban lasted for 10 years until Ozzy finally made a public apology and donated money to the historical society that takes care of the Alamo. Getting banned from a city is a big deal, but our next rock legend built a whole career on a lifestyle that most people couldn't survive for a week, let alone decades. 14. Lemmy's lifestyle of pure rock and roll. The band Motorhead was loud, fast, and never compromised. And their frontman, a man named Lemmy Kilmister, was the living embodiment of rock and roll. With his gravelly voice, huge warts, and signature bass-playing style, Lemmy was an icon. He was also legendary for his extreme lifestyle. For over 40 years, the rumors persisted that Lemmy lived on a diet that consisted almost entirely of hard liquor and stimulants, and that he almost never ate vegetables or drank water. People said he consumed a bottle of whiskey every single day from the time he was 30 until he passed away. It sounds like an exaggeration, a myth to build up his tough guy image. The truth is, the rumors were not an exaggeration. They were his actual life. In numerous interviews, Lemmy himself confirmed his daily routine. He would start his day with a whiskey and Coke and continue drinking them all day long. He claimed he was healthier than people who exercised and ate salads because he never polluted his body with healthy things. A documentary was made about his life, and it showed him living this way, day in and day out, even in his 60s. Doctors were amazed that his body could handle it. In fact, one story claims that later in his life, doctors advised him to stop his unhealthy habits. But when they tried to give his blood a transfusion, they said his body was so accustomed to his lifestyle that introducing clean blood might actually be more of a shock to his system. He lived and breathed rock and roll right up until his very last day, proving that he was truly one of a kind. A lifestyle that defies medical science is one thing, but what about a frontman whose words on stage were so offensive they created a storm of controversy that followed his band for years? 15. Phil Anselmo's outbursts on stage. Pantera was one of the most powerful and important metal bands of the 1990s. They had a heavy, groovy sound that was all their own. Their live shows were known for being incredibly intense and aggressive. Their singer, Phil Anselmo, was a very intimidating and charismatic frontman. However, he also developed a reputation for going on long, angry rants from the stage. The rumors were that he would often say things that were deeply offensive and promoted hateful ideas, causing a lot of fans and critics to turn against him and the band. These rumors are unfortunately true and became a major source of conflict for the band. Throughout the 90s, and even after Pantera broke up, Phil was known to make speeches during concerts that were filled with anger. He would talk about his pride and his heritage in ways that made many people very uncomfortable. The most famous incident happened many years later at a tribute show for his late bandmate, Dimebag Darrell. At the end of the show, he gave a hateful salute and yelled a racist slogan. The whole thing was caught on video and created a huge firestorm. Other musicians condemned him, and he was called out across the metal community. He later apologized, saying he was just making a bad joke, but the damage was done. It confirmed the rumors that had followed him for years and left a dark stain on his legacy and the legacy of his legendary band. Legendary band. Legendary band.